Hello! Today I will be featuring a Shinonome ranked commentary. And starting off, well, I make a pretty big mistake. First of all, in the chat first I say let's go A, and then I reconsider that going B on this map. I've actually had a 100% win rate across all servers. So I change my mind. Let's go B instead, because, well, looking at the team, we can see that, well, we have a Farragut. So the Farragut can actually smoke our team up really well, and we can get some really good firing arcs going. So I change my mind here, and let's tell them to go B instead. Now this is a mistake, because people are very, very stubborn in this game, and making that kind of change at the very start tends to throw people off for some reason. Now, you'd think it would be a very simple case. Your DD says, nah, let's go B instead. But it's really not that simple in randoms, because people, when they decide on a cap, they are almost impossible to change their minds. Like, you cannot manage it. And we can already see it looking at the minimap. We can see that our Nuremberg and our Cleveland and our Fuso is going towards A. And everyone is saying B. Everyone is saying it. We can say that now. We are telling B. And I'm also telling them that you're supposed to go where the DD goes, because going anywhere else is completely stupid. Now this, especially if you're a Cleveland and a Nuremberg, especially cruisers, because, as I say here, only an idiot would go anywhere else than where the DD goes. And our Fuso says, fuck a DD. Which is very confusing, but ultimately this kind of thing happens, and I take partial blame. Well, partial blame in the sense that I changed my mind, and you really don't want to change mine, because people in ranked are, as I said, they are very, very stubborn, and for some reason, if they decide to go on a cap, it's almost impossible to make them change their minds anymore. Still though, I outspot the Farragut, which is something you do with the Shinonome. I drop some early torps on him, and I'm gonna see if I can maybe get some damage in on him. The Shinonome has very good firepower per volley. The DPM, however, is quite bad because it has such a long reload. And the turret traverse is also very slow, which is why I run the turret traverse module. But I do land some good damage on him, and it looks like he's completely turning away. Farragut manages to spot the Fubuki. So ultimately, the initial engagement isn't that bad. Also, since we spotted both their DDs, it means that our division or party that's going to A is actually going to get the cap for free. So we should be getting an advantage here. But I thought it was important to highlight this beginning where I changed my mind, because people tend to... It's something you should avoid, changing minds, because people are already extremely fickle in ranked. When they think they have a good idea, trying to dissuade them from fulfilling this idea is almost impossible. Like, you see a Nuremberg rushing in alone, you tell them you're gonna die, that's a bad idea. I'm gonna intentionally ground here so I can turn around quickly. If you try to tell them that what they're doing is a bad idea, they will even more stubbornly try to fulfill their bad idea. So not really much we can do about this. Still though, we do manage to get A, and ultimately the situation is not that bad. They are able to shoot my battleships on this side are able to shoot the Cleveland for free, and I'm gonna try to push in a bit and see if I can maybe spot these DDs, since there was a Fubuki quite nearby, and I do in fact spot the Fubuki, which is quite important, because this way I'm able to spot any incoming torps, and I'm able to warn my team. The problem is this Cleveland is actually pushing in, which forces me to smoke, which is something I really didn't want to do, because I kind of would have loved to smoke up my battleships instead, but there's not much I can do about it. I am forced, when a Cleveland is that close, it's better to just use your smoke for yourself. The problem is though that these DDs are going to be a real issue for my two battleships here, because my battleships are pushed quite deep, which is usually a good thing, but considering that half my team decided to go to A, my battleships are really quite vulnerable on this flank, so I have to keep actively scouting for them. I have to keep vision up for them so that they don't get torped, and I have to keep the enemy spotted so that my battleships can actually shoot. Farragut obviously tries to push. He tries to push either me or the battleships, I don't know, but I am giving my team vision here. Now the Farragut decides to play very aggressively, and here's one of the extremely good things about the Shinonome, and that's that you can sail directly away from the enemy and still keep 2 guns on him. You see how my guns are turned right away from him? I'm sailing straight away from him. I'm still able to bring 2 guns to bear, which is actually more than the Farragut can bring to bear on me, unless he turns and shows broadside, as he's doing here. So they're struggling to deal damage to me, whereas my battleships are helping with this Farragut. You saw that massive AP volley that guy just ate. And in combination with the DPM I can bring with my back guns, I'm quite easily able to kill him. And the Fubuki now, well, he can't really keep chasing me, can he? You can see just how much damage. I can bring the same amount of gunpowder to bear on him as he can bring to bear on me, but he has to show full broadside, whereas I can just sail right away. And my battleships land another great volley, which is of course fantastic because now I can actually take this fight on this flank. The problem here is, of course, the Fuso that the big-mouthed Fuso that told us to fuck DDs. Well, if you look at his positioning on the minimap, you can see that he has a terrible positioning where he can't actually shoot at anyone because he decided to sail through A and he put an island between himself. So my Bayern on this side is kind of responsible for all our firepower, and our New Mexico decided to push down middle instead of staying on this flank with me. Which also makes life harder because I can't scout for him. That's the fundamental reason why you should always move with your DDs. Ultimately though, I launched torps for both the New Mexico and the Arizona that's behind the island, and I'm gonna turn around and see if I can smoke up my Bayern, who's the only one who's actually stuck on this flank with me, which is really, this is a very strange battle. But that's how it tends to somehow work out in this ranked. People have their own ideas and it's very hard to dissuade them. And well, my New Mexico, it's only I think a matter of time before he gets torped to shit, since he's right next to the enemy and there's no way for me to scout him. And as expected, the Fubuki torps him and gets a 3 kill basically there. I do land some good torps, however. I get at least I get 1 hit on that guy, I get 2 hits on the Arizona, and I sail over here to smoke up my Bayern, because he's 1 versus 2 at this point. He has to deal with 2 battleships shooting him, plus potential Graf Spee. I don't know if the Cleveland was spamming him as well. Ultimately though, my smoke is best used to help him out. Now usually of course the Farragut should be the one smoking up the team, while the Shinonome does the spotting, if you have both of them in a division. But with our Farragut adventuring on the other side of the map, obviously you need to pick up the slack in your IGN DD, or if your Farragut dies early, or if your Farragut smoke runs out, whatever. It's such a huge advantage for your team to smoke up your division mates. Ideally, of course, I would have wanted to smoke up the New Mexico, but since the New Mexico decided to sail down the middle, there's not really much I can do to help him at this point. The Bayern is using my smoke to turn around and bring all his guns to bear. You saw how I made a long line of smoke, and that's generally how you want to make it. You want to make your smoke as large as possible to give your battleships a lot of room to maneuver, to dodge, and not feel constrained. But torps, I think, are going to miss entirely. But this Arizona, he's giving a lot of broadside to this Bayern. They're trying to shoot, but they can't see him. So our Bayern is basically just free farming damage at this point, which is of course the whole point of smoking up your battleships. A smoked up battleship is going to be far more effective at dealing damage than a smoked up DD is. And this is something you see quite often, is DDs smoking up themselves to shoot. And that's the kind of superbly selfish gameplay that really only serves yourself. I mean, when you smoke up yourself without being forced to, like for example the way I was forced to because there was a Cleveland right next to me. If you smoke up yourself, you're kind of letting everyone know that you're just playing for your own star. You're not playing for your team, you're playing to maintain your own star, you're playing to save your own star, you're not really playing to win. Whereas smoking up your division mates, or well, your teammates, is obviously a plan to save or to win the game. In this case, the Arizona who tried to flee, I managed to kill him off, so now our Bayern is only against the New Mexico. The Fuso, however, has managed to get himself torped, which is of course a very bad thing. Both the Fuso and the New Mexico chose to push and the Fubuki just free farmed both of them and killed them off. And now the enemy Fuso killed off our Nürnberg that was also adventuring on the other side of the map. So we are down to a 3 versus 4, which is unfortunate. The Cleveland seems to be pushing up this right flank, so I drop Torps here, and I pop my speed boost, my last speed boost in this case, because I don't want to get caught by the Cleveland coming around this corner, as he seems to be doing. I am going to repeatedly call target on him though, to let my Bayern know that there's a low HP cruiser he can finish off on this flank. My Torps are going to miss. He took a much wider spread, or wider arc around the corner than I hoped for. Call target on him twice, and my Bayern says affirmative. This is always a good way to let your teammates know that you have noticed this kind of thing, and I really like the fact that he... Sorry about that, my phone. I really like the fact that he calls out the affirmative, because now I know that this threat will be dealt with. I'm pushing into the cap. I managed to surprise their Fubuki as I come around the corner, and now he's caught in a crossfire between me and the Farragut. I want to smoke because I'm a bit worried about the New Mexico shooting me, but ultimately, as long as I have the Fubuki spotted in such a good position, I withhold smoking for a few more seconds, since I really want to get this kill, because killing their last DD will give me so much more freedom, and my Farragut so much more freedom as well. And we do manage to get the kill. At this point I do instantly smoke up though, because the New Mexico is very, very close, and I don't want to hit any massive AP pins, and he luckily Dispersion decides he misses. He does seem to be pushing up towards our Bayern, but our Bayern is actually in quite a good position in the sense that he's angled towards the New Mexico and Fuso, and he's able to bring his full broadside to bear on the Cleveland, and he does kill off the Cleveland, which is fantastic. Sadly our Farragut dies right after, and well, the Farragut, even though he pushed up the other flank, he went to the other team. I can't really say that he played it badly, because with both our cruisers deciding to go there and the Fuso who decided to push there as well, it was good that they had at least one DD to help them, even if their decision to go to A was questionable. I'm hoping to be able to nail this New Mexico before he kills my Bayern, since my Bayern has been so very useful. Sadly I was forced to smoke up myself here. I would love to actually save this smoke for my teammate, but with the New Mexico pushing at me and in the position I was with nowhere to really turn around, I was forced to use my smoke for myself. At this point though, I managed to torp him and kill him off, and we are in a 2 versus 1. The Bayern was however very low, and in fact the Sepif, New Mexico managed to get a fire on him, I assume with his secondaries, and now we're down to a 1 versus 1. However, on a large map like this, you can't really lose it as a DD unless you screw up. The fundamental plan I have here is, well, first of all, I'm gonna drop preemptive torps on him right away. The plan is with the half HP I have, AR has already kicked in, so I only have a 1 minute cooldown on my torps, which means if I land torps, even one on him, and most likely cause a flooding, I only need to land one more to get a perma flood on him. So my goal is really to land a total of 2 torps. I'm not hoping for anything more. So I launch a fairly tight spread, and I keep myself in the torp view at all times, because if you switch to your guns, if he has priority target, it actually shows you that someone is targeting you. However, if you're in the torp view and you target someone, it doesn't show that someone is targeting you on priority target. So this way, even though he's detected, he doesn't realize that I'm actively aiming at him. I do get the 1 hit, which is exactly what I wanted. That's going to guarantee that his repair is on cooldown now, and because I launched those torps from so far away, they took so long for them to travel that by the time his repair is up, I'm already going to be able to launch my next volley. So whereas I launched the first volley from about 10 kilometers, this second volley I'm launching from 7.5, 7.4, and I launched 2 in the direction he's going and 1 to the right, because a common trick for battleships, or well, any player, is if they get torched from an angle, they wait a few seconds and then they turn into that angle later on. So I'm predicting that this guy's going to turn hard right. And this Fuso, well, he does exactly what I was hoping he would do. He turns hard right, intending to turn into any incoming torps. But seeing as I predicted this move pretty much perfectly at this point, he's going to be eating a lot of my torps. In fact, looks like 2, maybe 3. Yeah, 3 of my torps, but most importantly, he eats a flooding at this point, and his repair is guaranteed on cooldown. So he's going to be flooding. Even, however, if I had missed these torps, the way you can play this when you have a capture point advantage is if he caps B, you just sit near B and wait until he leaves. If he tries to sail for A, to cap A as well, you just go in behind him and you cap B from behind him. If he comes back to defend B, then you leave B. So that way you always keep a one capture, you always keep one cap. And if you have a points lead, that's all really you need to do. You need to keep that one cap and you will win the game. Because as long as you have a lead, it's he needs to cap both or kill you. And as a battleship, it's pretty much impossible against the DD who just plays it safe. So I pretty much had a guaranteed win as long as I didn't get myself killed for something stupid. I could have shot him here to reset the cap, but it wasn't worth the risk of eating a ton of battleship AP. The risk always exists, so I let him get his solo cap because I know that my next spread of torps is going to catch him completely off guard. And as you can see, he eats the torps and he does get himself killed, which is of course exactly what we were hoping for. Now the game of course ends here with our victory. 141,000 damage, a pretty amusing liquidator aboard because of the way I spaced out my torpedoes on that guy. And this was of course on my NA account, hence the renamed username. And looking at the team score, 2.2k basic speed. Sadly no Kraken. In fact, if I'd gotten that Fubuki kill, I could have gotten my Kraken here, but the Farragut managed to get that one. Not that I really honestly care in ranked, it's more important that we kill off the DD more than anything else. Not surprisingly, the one who finished second on the scoreboard is the Bayern, who was smart enough to support and stay on our flank, and the one who used my smoke to gain a lot of damage, so that was good play from him. Some questionable play from the rest, but then again, I do take some responsibility there for changing my mind, and I know that's something that really random people in ranked really can't deal with changing plans. They have this one plan, and if you try to change it, they just raise hell. But ultimately though, a pretty damn good game. Detailed report was only 27k spotting, not much potential damage since I spent most of the time undetected. In fact, the only time that I really was detected was mostly when I was scouting the enemy DDs intentionally. And overall, a lot of damage done to the battleships, a bit to the DDs, not really that big of a deal. Most of the damage, of course, comes from torps because the Shinonome is a torpedo boat, but some gunpowder on the DDs naturally. Anyway, let me move on to my recommended build for this ship. Alright, starting off, module-wise, not much to discuss. You want to be using premium damage control and premium smoke, of course, since you are playing ranked and you are playing the Shinonome. In case you're wondering where do you get this Shinonome from, well, everyone can get access to the Shinonome. It's very easy to get. All you need to do is complete the campaign. I think, was it the normal or this one? Yeah, it's honorable service. You complete honorable service campaign, and the reward here is the Shinonome with an 11-point commander. So as long as you've completed the honorable service campaign, everyone can get this ship. Upgrade wise, main armaments mod 1. Turret Traverse, aka main battery mod 2. Now, if you have access to expert marksman, meaning you have a higher tier captain than the one I have, then you can switch this out to aiming systems mod, which is actually a lot better than running main battery. But until you have expert marksman, you pretty much have to run main battery mod 2 because the turret traverse is so horrid. Or well, you don't have to, but I highly recommend it because the turret traverse is otherwise 30 seconds, and using this cuts it down by a good 4 seconds. AKA almost 20%, well it says 15, but still. So this is very much worth it. Propulsion mod 1, Although, actually, I do have engine boost. I didn't even realize I had engine boost. I had one extra. Of course, engine boost is better than propulsion if you do have one additional. And finally, propulsion mod 2 as well, because the rudder shift is so great on the ship that you don't need a rudder shift. You can just increase your acceleration. Captain perks wise, very much my usual IGN DD build, which means we start off with preventive maintenance, we follow it up with last stand, then we get survivability expert and concealment expert. This is the 10-point captain. 12-point captain, adrenaline rush. And at this point, I honestly would, with the 14-point captain, I would probably go for expert marksman because the turret traverse is so important. And after that, you would have 5 points left. Now, there are two builds I could recommend. One is you go RPF and priority target because RPF is so incredibly useful in ranked. The other option is you go vigilance and torpedo reload, or alternatively superintendent and torpedo reload. Both those builds are very good. Additional smokes are very useful in rank to help your team, and of course the faster torp reload helps you a lot as a torpedo boat. Alternatively, if you don't feel like using the guns, which is a bit silly considering if you don't want to use the gun part of a IGN-DD like the Shinonome, then you should be playing Fubuki to begin with, since if the Fubuki has 10 km torps but in return has less guns. But ultimately, if you don't want to be using the guns on the ship, then you just keep using the turret traverse thing like I'm using here, and after this 12-point cap, then you build torpedo reload for 15 and then RPF for a 19-point captain. That's my usual IGN DD build, just so you know. If you go torpedo expertise and you go radio location, that's the build I would recommend on the Fubuki, and that's pretty much exactly my Shimakaze build or Yuguma build, Kagero build, so forth. It's my IGN DD build. But ultimately on the Shinonome I would really like expert marksman, since the turret traverse is very, very slow, but the gunpowder on the ship is very, very good, so it's usually worth actually buffing those guns. But that I leave up to you guys. Anyway, that was my Shinonome commentary. I hope you guys enjoyed it.